Hey everybody, and welcome back to the House of Holocrons podcast. So in this episode, we are going to be going over the bad guys to counteract, of course, the rebellion we talked about. We're going to be talking about the Empire. The quote-unquote bad guys, the absolute villains, and the ultimate evil in the galaxy far, far away.
Quote unquote.
Quote-unquote. Of course, the Empire are responsible for the Death Star, for Star Destroyers, and for a lot of oppression and locking down a lot of the galaxy.
Yeah.
So that's a fun one. With the Empire, of course, I guess the first point to tackle is like the elephant in the room. Are they the bad guys? Yeah, they don't do good things. They don't get the methods done nicely. It brought peace and stability to the elites of each planet.
So anything we say that is really fanboying about the Empire, we know they're the bad guys and they're the utmost evil. We do not support the Empire.
As much as we love them.
They are cool and they have a cool aesthetic, but we do not support their way of doing things.
Right, exactly. But we will fanboy about them, and we will go off and fangirl because they
You will fanboy about them.
Yeah, I will. Because the Empire is where it's at, and they have cookies, and they have, force choking, and Darth Talon, and I'm all there for all of the dark side. And it just comes with the Empire. Where there is the Sith, there is the Empire. Even in the Old Republic, it was the Sith Empire, and they looked exactly the same pretty much. Nothing changes.
Where do you think he got all the ideas?
Exactly, yeah. So, whatever. There's a fun theory that Tenebrae doesn't die, the infinite emperor from like Old Republic, and he's the one who like showed Palpatine what to do. But that's a fun little headcanon. The Empire in itself, though, the idea of this heavy militaristic governing body that rules absolute over all things, that's not new to the galaxy. Palpatine makes it seem like it is if you only watch the movies, but in the rest of the expanded universe especially, and some of the canon Old Republic, there have been empires before that function much more, just as similar pretty much. It's cyclical almost.
Well, the Empire is it's a type of government that basically controls multiple basically it's a large area that covers multiple countries or planets or bodies. It's just this and it's usually ruled by an emperor, which we get from Palpatine.
Yeah.
Which that stemmed from his plan transforming the Republic to the Empire when he basically defeated the Senate, and then he became the ruler. And the Empire basically just total control.
Yeah.
We see kind of a mirror of the Roman Empire.
Yes. Especially though with the officers in down. Once you get away from the Sith of the Empire, which we will talk about, of course, a little bit, but when you get away from Darth Vader and from Emperor Palpatine or Lord Sidious, and look at just the admirals and the Moffs, they function a lot like that Roman army where, the way they lead, the battalions, all that kind of stuff, the honor, and almost the brainwashing. It's legitimately, though, they do also brainwash the troops, like, rigorously.
It's also really distinctive because everything is going to be clean and perfect, lots of angles. If you look at everything with the design, it's like neat, pressed, everything.
Yeah.
You look at the Rebellion, it's not. Yeah. It's a conglomeration of everything.
You see everything uniform, everything's got a standard.
And not only just uniform, all the troopers are faceless pretty much.
Yep.
Besides officers and up, you don't see anyone's face.
I mean, a lot of it
don't really get to see much of the characters behind stormtroopers, and that's more of a story standpoint, so that you don't kind of question the good guys from killing the stormtroopers.
Right. You don't mind when they this planet was besieged by stormtroopers. Oh, good. What happened? They all died. Oh, yeah, cool. But really, when you think about it, from the Empire, these are sometimes abducted orphans or children, or
in the New Order.
Oh, no, sometimes even in the Empire.
Well, in the first one, it was more volunteer-based.
In the very beginning, yes, it was volunteer-based, like a normal army. Because a lot of people really believed the propaganda that was going around, and they wanted to defend their galaxy.
Yeah.
But eventually they did resort to
straight up just kidnapping.
Yeah.
Much unlike their clone counterparts, though, in the Empire, there was no personalization allowed.
Yeah.
Stormtrooper armor was designated to you, and you were not allowed to alter it in any way because it showed rank and file. And
some did have color identification.
Yes,
but
some
they
did.
weren't customized.
Right,
They were
exactly.
mainly for either the battalion or a lot of it was for what type of trooper you were. They did
Certain
have
brigades and things like that.
And I was trying to look. It looks like they're cleaner, the trooper helmets versus the clone helmets, like just the angular styles and stuff.
Don't want to harp too much on the clones again. The clones, they kind of learned that originally by. Give me if I'm wrong on this, but canon. But the tradition actually stemmed from the Mandalorians, which a lot they got the training from, which is keeping things, kind of your damage to your armor was more of a trophy to show off that I'm a veteran, I've been in battle. So when you saw a clone trooper that was, the armor was all scarred up, had, some damage to it, that trooper's survived several battles, he's going to do well.
But you don't want that in the Empire.
No, the Stormtroopers are like the immortal empire or the immortal army of Xerxes, because they all wear masks. You don't actually know how many you've killed. It's the same people coming at you wave and wave and wave and wave, because it's a numbers game with the Empire.
The only ones that we get to see any kind of damage or any difference to are the ones that are on certain planets like Tatooine.
Yeah.
Because
Outer Rim.
It's hard to with the shipping things in. Also, desert. It's hard to stay clean in the desert. So
you
eventually you can't do it. You just got to give up with that. So.
Yeah. No, I would think also the ones that show any kind of damage end up turning, like Finn. Like his hammer gets the red handprint right over it.
It's for a story element. It kind of helps too, because you can tell what a special Stormtrooper is just by them looking different and having like a marking or not being so robotic.
And that gets a little bit different with the First Order, because then we get into a little bit mind control.
Like much more
hardcore.
The Empire is. So what is it? I would say that the number one guy in the Empire would be Tarkin. When you take out Palpatine and Vader.
Yeah, he's basically the highest rank, if I understand at this point.
Grand Admiral, Grand Moff. He controls a lot of planets. He controls a lot of ships. A lot of the Imperial Navy is his. Most of it's all under his control now.
Yeah, he's running most of it at that point, with some help from Palpatine.
When we get into Civil War, he almost pretty much, in a way, he kind of outranks Vader. In certain situations. You actually see him throw authority around over Vader and the first Undue Hope.
Yeah.
So you gotta see that when it comes to the military side, I guess Sidious sees more trust in him, which I would understand.
Yeah.
Because at this point, Vader's he's kind of controlled, but he still has his bursts of anger.
Yeah.
So you see him when he tries to choke out. I think his name was Mahdi.
Oh yeah.
Officer Mahdi.
Yeah.
Admiral Mahdi.
Admiral Mahdi and the. I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I would never say that Palpatine trusts anybody.
Yeah.
But Tarkin's about as close as it gets.
Oh, because Tarkin, he understands that if Tarkin had the Force, he'd be just as powerful as Palpatine. Because he's a snake. Like, Tarkin will do whatever it takes to get the results he needs, and he will win. Like, he is super smart. He could put Thrawn up for his money. And he's the only one who's like next really on the list would be Thrawn. Those two kind of like.
But he disappeared.
Yeah, he disappears exactly, and Tarkin is human, so that also gives him a leg up.
So you see kind of this mirrored in history with different types of leaders. It's very popular in Chinese history. We have the strategic generals that didn't really fight.
Yeah.
And then you have the kind of warlords who were masters at battle. So you get that with kind of the Darth Vader and Tarkin in that instance.
Yeah.
Darth Vader's more great on the battlefield, while Tarkin is really great at strategy.
But at least, hey, there was that one comic that is canon. Tarkin and Vader do have like a one-on-one fight where Tarkin brings, like, Vader tells him, bring up your best bounty hunters and hunt me down. and Tarkin almost beats Vader, but he doesn't, just because Vader has the Force and he's he's
Like I
Darth
said,
freaking
and
Vader.
Tarkin had to do it because he's not a warrior,
Yeah,
but he's a military strategist. So.
he's just smart enough to he can outthink any situation. He can strategize. He can use that to his advantage.
I think that's the only reason that he is above Thrawn.
Yeah.
Because Thrawn is Chiss.
Chiss. Yep. It's
So
just because he's a
he
Chiss.
automatically gets put down because that's how the Empire is. They're human only. And then, but Thrawn can fight. He's physical. So.
Well, then that's
has
the thing
that on
where
him.
everything where I would say that Tarkin is mischievous and backhanded and will do whatever it takes. Thrawn is just that much smarter. He doesn't need to be dirty-handed.
Yeah.
He will just somehow find a way to get what he wants. Like he can just play with objects and manipulate moments so easily. And like, if he wasn't a Chiss, if he was a human, he would have been above Tarkin.
And if he didn't need Palpatine, he would be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you get honestly, I don't really think he cares about needing Palpatine. I
Yeah.
think he needs the Empire more because it gives him a platform.
Right.
That's kind of where I'm
Yeah.
going with that.
Yeah. True.
And,
He has the deal
and
with
Thrawn,
him.
of course, he's the fan favorite
Mhm.
out of most officers, and I think that's everyone's favorite that knows about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most people.
And you gotta imagine how great of a officer he is, or a strategist, everything he is, because how highly he made Grand Admiral
Mm-hmm.
as a non-human,
Right.
which the Empire doesn't do. There's hardly any non-humans. There's hardly anything besides a white male
Yeah.
as an officer, and that was intentional.
Yeah. They're
You do get-
xenophobic. It's a point.
You do get some females. Most of them don't get past a too high a rank. There's Price and Sloane are the
Yeah.
two that I found offhand without digging too deep.
Yeah.
And the only other females
and then
or
there's,
aliens are the sisters and brothers. The dark sister, dark brother.
They're not Imperial.
Yeah.
The Night Brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're
No,
not
no,
Imperial.
no. The Inquisitors.
Oh, the Inquisitors. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, well,
But
they
they're
don't
like their
really-
own. Yeah.
I know, but I'm
The-
saying
but
like they're
true,
still
yes, the
Empire.
Inquisitorium is
is
they are
it is
Imperial. They are
Imperial.
strictly Imperial because they're not Sith.
Mm-hmm.
I forget
They
too much
they
about
can
the
use the
Empire,
dark side, but they're not Sith. Don't you dare.
because I don't know if you really can count them as part of the Empire. They're kind of their own
Yeah.
entity.
They operate
But
on their
yeah,
own, and they answer only to Vader and Palpatine.
Yeah, but
I
they
would
do
still count
operate
that.
with the
Yeah.
Empire.
They
enough
hey
that-
they
yeah.
dress just like the Empire, so I mean,
But I did
Have you
forget
seen
one.
their
one
Inquisitor?
thing.
yeah.
I believe she's a low-ranking officer, which is Iden Versio, which is from
Oh, yeah.
Battle.
That's an awesome storyline in Battlefront 2. That's a fun
Yeah.
one.
So it's
Inferno
yeah.
Squadron.
Out of that,
Well-
of the small few, the rest are
Mhm.
basically white males. Like I said, that
Yeah,
was
oh,
kind
yeah,
of the
yeah.
intentional. It was supposed to mirror off the government that shall not be named.
Yeah.
Um,
It's pretty much what if the government that shall not be named was replaced in the Roman times, and the leader of said
well,
people
that-
was Caesar.
Yeah.
well, the group that shall not be named actually based a lot of their stuff off Roman Empire.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
So-
It's basically them in space with
That's
powers.
what. Yeah. Big eagles, lots of gold.
I mean,
Speeches.
and I imagine that was very intentional.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, because I mean, look at
I-
the time whenever this was created.
Yeah.
This was really
I mean,
close.
how do you?
He would have been hearing stories from like older generations fighting in the war.
Yeah.
It would be really prevalent still. So
Yeah, that was still a big deal. How do you make a bad guy entity without with making it clear that these are the bad guys?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, without the Cold War was roughly around that time.
Mm-hmm.
it would have been when
So
his
they didn't want to
childhood.
make it too clear with the Russians.
Yeah.
So they, he went to the other side, which I think, was pretty smart. Because, if you went too far Roman, you could start questioning, are these really the bad guys?
Yeah.
Type thing. But if we get it straight clear, I mean, heck, he even makes the leaders, Vader, have a red lightsaber. These guys are evil.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Palpatine is this hideous, old, decrepit creature man. But I've always loved that too, because like looking at the helmet you have and thinking about the changes that happens within the stormtroopers, it's very unlike what happens with the grand officers. Like when you look at the grand admirals, they are very wealthy, they're very prominent, and then the normal stormtrooper, like the armor they have now, that's why like when you see them get hit, they go down because it's supposed to disperse a blaster, but it can't take a direct hit very well. The helmets, you know, you hear multiple stories of the stormtroopers in the helmets complaining. It fogs up. The smoke ventilation doesn't work very well sometimes.
They don't have
you do get
any
the
gas mask or anything.
Yeah.
The rebels actually use one thing you don't hear unless you deep dive. The rebels actually use a lot of their blasters are high-end caliber blasters.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one reason a lot of times they do die in one hit.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, I would use a slug.
Slug thrower.
Yeah.
Yeah, the standard blaster. Well, if there is a standard, they can have a standard at one point.
Mm.
You get into later in. Forget the model, but it's based on the M16 rifle, and that's supposed to be one of the highest caliber for that style of rifle, assault rifle at the time. You know, it said that it could, you know, you could actually cut somebody in half if you just shot straight up somebody. It's supposed to be that powerful. So the rebels basically just acquired stuff that could ignore the armor, but also, you know, your standard stormtrooper compared to the clones didn't have the training as well as the clones did, and the blasters, in my opinion, still are not as good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they're going to be mass produced, and
that's why all the armor and everything sucks, because of its mass production.
Yeah.
And they're basically submachine gun based for the standard E11, so that's not very accurate on its own. So the fact that they can actually hit things with it already, as somebody's experienced with firearms, some machine guns like that where you can't really. I mean, they had the foldable stock, but they're not accurate. It's a way to waste ammo.
Yeah.
Well, and so a lot of their stuff is going to be mass produced and produced cheaply, because all of that money is either going to higher ups or Death Star.
Death Star, yeah.
And
He's spending so much money on the Death Star.
When you get that with the TIE fighters as well.
Well, and all the other, and the TIE fighters, because like a normal TIE fighter pilot's lifespan was like 2 missions.
It's power in numbers, because one, they want to just swarm, and two, they want to be able to control the Empire's territory. Yeah,
so all the Star Destroyers cost a lot of money, the Death Star cost a lot of money, all the fortresses to hide all the secret Jedi stuff that Palpatine was hiding cost a lot of money.
Also, they didn't want the rebels to get a hold of anything that would be useful against them.
Yeah, that's why Palpatine had all these like planets that were one time sacred or like protected, that he would then invent a reason. Oh, there's terrorists, the rebels are there, or oh, we found minerals to save these people, and he would go and wipe out the whole population and then just start mining all the resources off of the planet.
Like if they killed the troopers or something, they couldn't take their armor.
Oh, the TIE fighters also,
and they would break or something, so they wouldn't be useful to the rebellion.
To destroy.
Well, the TIE fighters are useless without a carrier because they have no life support.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that's good about using the TIE fighters. I mean, it's terrible for the pilot, but that's the reason why they didn't steal TIE fighters, because you couldn't use them.
Because if the destroyer took off, you're
the destroyer leaves you, you're done. And they've done it before, they do it again. Like in every single rebel ship, from the X-wing, A-wing, Y-wing, they all had hyperdrive capability, hyperspace.
The kit made them expendable, and the armor, in a way, it seems silly that they'd wear full head-to-toe bright white armor, but it has its pros to it.
I mean, look at the hallways they normally fight in, though. They're pretty bright.
Well, also, you got a uniform, so that's great if there is a large battle, which they did do a little bit, and then they do later on, so you get less friendly fire, because you know that's on your side. It's a bright white head-to-toe, so you know not to shoot them. Especially when they are outnumbering the enemy at that point, they really don't need to worry about guerrilla warfare or blending in.
Yeah.
Because they need to know where each other are, because there's so many of them. And then also you get the iconic look, and that kind of stems from the Republic going into that. So, when you see a stormtrooper, it's instant, almost fear in your face. So because you know that that's a stormtrooper, there's no question about it. It's the armor. So it kind of does psychological warfare, or when they're in towns and you have them, because they put them, and you'll see that in planets in the movies, or in other, you'll see them standing around guarding or patrolling, and it's no question about that's a stormtrooper, and you've heard stories about either good or bad, so
right,
they do their part.
and again, they're completely faceless, so and I think in a way that almost kind of helps these men and women underneath the helmet, because a lot of them, again, in the early Empire especially, are like hardcore loyal. Like, they are all for the Empire. They love the Empire. And being faceless, they can like take that helmet off whenever they finally got back to their bunk after the end of everything, and like they weren't really attached to the stuff they were doing. So I'm sure that also played a part on the other side, that like it's not really a thing, but I'm just, I'm thinking it up, so it's just fun to think about, in the sense that like that would help them detach themselves from gunning down an entire family on orders because one of them helped rebels.
Yeah, and hold any animosity when they go back. They
I mean,
take the armor off.
Oh man, in the Bad Batch, watching the transition into the Empire, when like those troopers are literally just burning all of these families because they were rebels.
Or whenever Saw Gerrera.
Yeah, Saw Gerrera might as well like be Imperial.
Right.
The way he fights.
But like whenever they were going after him.
Yes, when they were going after him, yeah, that's when that was the beginning of it.
And Rogue One as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we see that a New Hope, when they destroy Luke's home, they destroy the Jawas.
You can also see it in Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Whenever the Inquisitors just kill like an entire family.
Mandalorian, we see the Remnant with the Flame Troopers and the Mortar Troopers. That's actually where we get to see a lot more of the variation for troopers, is from the TV show.
Yeah.
When you're Imperial politicians or news networks,
that's what I'm going to be excited to see in Andor.
These were terrorist. These were terrorist cells, or these were.
That will be a fun part of Andor. Is all the new stuff we're going to see. We're going to get to see more captains. That new Captain Black Series figure looks so gorgeous. But speaking of newer ones, though, underneath Thrawn and Tarkin, then we have like the Moffs and stuff. So like Moff Gideon,
dude, he's
great
terrifying.
Great addition to his Imperial counterparts.
Yeah, him.
How did he get the Darksaber?
Oh yeah, how did he get the Darksaber?
He
took it.
And some officers like Hess, which is also from The Mandalorian, where they are basically trying to bring back the Empire, and that kind of mirrors off of the Roman Empire when the fall of Caesar. Then the Empire split up in three entities. So you kind of see something similar.
Yeah, the Remnant is Eastern Empire trying to... No, I guess it'd be more Western Empire trying to survive, because the Eastern Empire was very prosperous. That was the Byzantine.
I wish
the Remnant is not prosperous.
I wish they would have mirrored off a little bit of that.
I guess
we had a little bit of civil war in between the Empire. That'd be kind of cool.
I guess the First Order was mostly the Byzantine Empire, because they kind of did take off. That would be really cool to see the First Order.
They turned a whole planet into a Death Star.
Yes. But that would be really cool, though, to see the Empire and the Remnant Empire have to, like, their dying breath is fighting off the First Order, before they all get conscripted or killed.
Yeah, some of them probably joined right away, and then some probably tried to stick. I'd just like to see, like, Empire and Empire, where there's, like, two admirals, like, saying, hey, I should be leading, and I'm a Moff, I should be in charge.
Yeah.
And then you have, like, the rebels still trying to form control, and so it's like this almost a full way, because as the First Order sticks up, I think that'd be pretty cool to watch.
Tarkin dies on the first Death Star, right? When it blows up?
I don't think he does. I thought he's...
So, but a lot of course, they all eventually start dying and stuff.
Because I know we see...
We also, the few people we don't know...
Yes.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he dies when the first Death Star blows up. That's what I thought.
We see, who was it?
Yes.
Veers. Because we see Veers, I believe, he starts leading.
That's why he was in the Imperial Walker on Hoth. But I'll give it to Veers.
He's also on the big Star Destroyer.
Mm-hmm. Admiral Veers, he was... That's another guy who I had in the list, too. He was much more of a on-the-ground leader than Tarkin was. Wasn't near as good of a strategist, but he was the kind of guy who, like, no, like, I'm not going to be on the front lines, but I'll at least be in like a really nice big armored tank behind
And
everyone shooting
don't
at stuff.
think they've had a canon death of Veers yet. If I understand.
Yeah, they have a full cannon. That's
think-
true. They haven't. I know one of the big is it Payne, or I don't really know what his name is. The admiral that happens in the First Order was like taken out in the last few days of the Empire. He was like, or not like last few days, but he wasn't. He was like he was deep in the Empire, and then like showed up bigger in the First Order because he was like the last remaining guy from the Empire.
He wasn't on the Death Star.
Yeah, because I'm sure Sidious still puts some of his dudes as controlling Snoke. He put some of his Imperial dudes in the First Order.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of them, because there's still got to be some, because then all the Star Destroyers are gone, and they're not all on the Death Star.
And I'll give them this: hey, their ingenuity. The Star Destroyer was a marvel of space battle. Like it showed. If a Star Destroyer showed up on the battlefield, you were wrecked. Like they could destroy planets. They could destroy like other entire fleets. They were powerhouses.
The problem with them, though, is that they would make one and it'd be great, but then they would immediately start going on to the next biggest one.
Yeah.
What could they make bigger, better, and they didn't really.
Well, and making them so big,
into...
they then created the fighter problem where they can control bombardment from other Class A ships and stuff like that, big ships. They don't do well with fighters because the fighters are so small, which is what leads to all the squadrons that we see through the rebellion.
Yeah.
They had their turbo lasers and stuff, but those are only good against large ships. And so when you get into, they had their defense lasers, but when you get in, a lot of those fighters are so quick, most of them can dodge. But not all of them, but they're so quick, and so that's when they had to be. They're pretty smart design. They're a carrier, and they're also a battleship, so they can do devastating attacks as well as harbor a lot of ships.
Which is the big thing, like we were talking about earlier. They just have a swarm mentality with their TIE fighters. TIE fighters come out in droves, and they're meant to just come out, do their thing, and go back.
Carry a lot of the ships, a lot of the TIE fighters, because the Star Destroyers got to carry a variety of things. Yeah. So they don't often are alone, but sometimes you'd see them alone. I guess most time you most see them alone because they're so big. Yeah. That would be the devastating, because you can almost you could see them from so high up. So you can see them from atmosphere easily. Orbit, see them start enter your atmosphere. It's
well, but like what you said too, because they do get bigger so much easier. There's the Star Destroyer, Super Star Destroyer. Then we have the Mammoth Star Destroyer.
And then what was that last one?
The Leviathan, something like that.
The one that got destroyed by.
Yeah, but the Mammoth Star Destroyer, I think that's the one that Vader was on. That one's like 3 times bigger than the last one. It's like a city. It's like an entire planet in the sky floating.
Then that's where they started to fail, because once they started focusing more on the bigger ships and the bigger weapons, they stopped really caring about the fighters, because they didn't ever really develop the TIE fighters more.
They never developed shit. They literally just made the cheapest, easiest option. There's like, here you go.
They did. Some of it wasn't canon. It depends, because if you get a lot of variants in comics, and then also if you get into the in the games.
I was gonna say, like Battlefront 2, the assault TIE fighter, the one that has like the 2 forked stars. Yeah. That is like a style of TIE fighter.
And then
so
they have the advanced.
They have
the advanced TIE fighter, which is what Vader flies, which is and then they have a stealth version. They have multiple versions. If you get into TIE fighter, not the miniature game. You have all the different variants you can use, and those are
or the Rogue Squadron game has them too.
Okay.
Yeah, well, a lot of them are from the Rogue Squadron game.
Yeah,
it looks like they put a lot more into the fighters or the transports for like the generals and stuff. Yeah, because they're so pretty.
Well, duh, they have all the money. Like I said, troopers don't get nothing besides free food and a place to sleep.
It's a statement, because when you see one land, that somebody's important is there.
Right.
Yeah, when the wings fold up and it looks,
If you're a normal person, or, you're like a rebel cell group that's not great, you're like, oh crap, this is about to get bad.
I mean, hell, that's the reaction we had in Mando. Yeah. Whenever Moff Gideon first shows up, his ship is so distinctive, you're like, oh, who's this?
Right.
So it's a statement, and it's a mental game. They do that with a lot of things, and then they focus heavily on the numbers game. Like so, which makes sense when they have such a big, wide.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing they didn't copy off the Roman Empire was when the Romans started conscripting other militaries. I wonder if that would have helped the Empire more.
Yeah, it is really cool when you see though from like episode 3 the way there's like that ball in the center of the starfighters the Jedi use. They have 2 wings and then the side wings open up and it almost has a TIE fighter look. Now that evolves into the TIE fighter, that was fun. But I think the other really classic ship that a lot of us know from the Empire is the Lambda shuttle. That one is used everywhere. Like that's Vader's personal shuttle ship. That's the one that Palpatine uses, and that one, at least, in its sense, was I don't remember it coming from anywhere but Imperial. So it's kind of an original design.
We see similar, in a way. It feels like because they had a similar shuttle, the Republic did.
Yeah.
I can't think of the
The
model
closest one I can think of is like what the Bad Batch has.
They have. I forgot what it's called. They have one similar. It's shaped in a way, but I mean that's a kind of a standard ship design.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the only thing that makes them iconic is the bright white.
Oh, and the rotation of the wings being like a super like over 180-degree rotation. Over 90, yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
But yeah, we have so we have quite a different variation of different levels, and so there's the naval side, and then there's the I guess the troop side. I forgot what it's the
infantry
foot troops. Yeah, I don't remember
those would be the ones we see in the Solo movie, right?
Well, you have different uniforms for them too, and the officer uniforms are actually different for those troops because they have their own officers. Most of them have a greenish, olive color, and then you have the naval typically has a grayer color sometimes.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep track because they have some sources where they don't keep consistent, and that's the same thing with the different colored troops as well.
Yeah.
And then you have the different branches, such as like the guard, the Imperial Guard, which is they kind of copied off the Senate Guard.
Oh, the ones in red, yeah.
Yeah. Which I don't know how much is still canon because originally they had those as Force users.
Right. They would have like
I
force
imagine
pikes.
They would still be.
They had
because
them
they
full
need to have at
armor
least something.
underneath the cloak, which I guess that's kind of similar how they did do the. It's like I think because the Senate Guard still had the armor underneath the cloak, so yeah, I believe that they just copied.
I don't know if it's fully canon, but I've always loved that the inspiration from their helmets is like the Neo Crusader Mandalorian style.
Well, they had some fun comic books. They had some characters who were basically, I guess they call them Dark Jedi at that point, that were the Imperial Guard. So they had some cool characters that would wear the red armor and the red sabers. They were pretty cool.
The comics, the Legends comics specifically, have a lot with like Kanor Jax and the Imperial Remnant, or a different kind of Imperial Remnant.
So the we don't ever really see them fight. The closest we ever see to them fight is in the last movie with the First Order.
Oh yeah,
their guard. So I don't know how.
Those are the Praetorians. Those are even different.
Yeah, this is the closest we ever get to see them fight. We can imagine that the Palpatine still uses them, so I imagine they're pretty good at fighting. Probably specialize in because at that point he's probably more scared about Jedi.
Yeah.
So I guessing with the Force spikes, they are designed to fight Jedi.
Just in case. And Snoke's this big, fake doll, just to be used and bait, pretty much.
Distraction.
Yeah. With the Empire too, though, Rebels shows a lot of really good ones. So then we have like I said, I finally get to share a namesake with an Imperial, or with anyone in Star Wars. I'm like, oh yeah, and it's an Imperial who gets
yeah, she kind of gets.
She gets punked every episode by these little kids.
Yeah, she's the laughing stock.
Yeah. Vader almost like chokes her 4 or 5 different times just because of her incompetence.
And then one of her direct subordinates ends up
She
Yeah.
falls for their tricks all the time.
Yup. Woo! Go
Yeah,
Price.
he ends up leaving and then going and staying with Zeb and them.
Yeah. Well, she almost gets
Yeah.
kind of replaced by Thrawn, which is like the complete
Yeah.
opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, who was that? That was
I can
investigator
never
or
remember his name.
inspector something. He wasn't he was like a
Oh,
sergeant or an
yeah.
officer. Guy with the big O chops.
Yeah.
Essentially, like, he looks like Sabretooth.
He looks like Sabretooth, he does.
He's very interesting because he's like part of the intelligence of.
Yeah.
He's like a counterintelligence
Callus.
unit or something.
Callus? Yeah, Callus.
So he's interesting.
What is his
that
rank?
He's kind of like the Imperial equivalent of the Inquisitors in a way.
Yeah, but like an actual Inquisitor, not the Inquisitorium.
Yeah.
Yeah, not Jedi hunters, but like, people who...
He's just
he's like a
formerly an
test
officer of the Imperial Security Bureau.
Okay, it's just an
Security
officer.
Bureau.
I think,
Yep.
Yeah, I think he's almost like a counterintelligence agent
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah,
Counter-terrorist, counterintelligence, yeah.
but he did a lot
Very
of training
Spec Ops.
under or about Zeb's people.
Yeah.
So that's why he was.
Well, that's
able
how
to
they
go
are even
fighting.
in the Battlefront 2 game. You can play as one of the same kind of officers that he is, and she runs around with 2 pistols and it has like awesome melee skills. So, like, they're very like run in and get things done.
Does she get like the little? Does she get shock batons too or something?
No, they have like a enemy sensor, a health thing, and then a rush attack. But like,
I haven't
yeah,
played it in a while.
she has awesome. Oh, I love Battlefront 2. I'm probably gonna play it after this.
Yeah, and he ends up becoming a spy. So it's very weird.
Yeah. Fulcrum.
It's very, yeah.
Which
Which
there's a
is-
lot of like the Crimson Dawn had spies in the spoiler to those not gotten through Crimson Reign comics yet, but yeah, the Crimson Dawn had spies within the Empire themselves. It's
Surprise,
so
I'm on your
massive. It's
side.
not hard to get people in. It's not hard to corrupt what's already evil people. It's a room full of bad people, and of course they'll take money and do what you want.
We also see that a lot with the Empire, where a lot of the Moffs and a lot of the officers, the way they seek promotion, a lot of times
Mhm.
it's underhanding, which is kind of the idea with the Sith and the hunger for powers,
Yeah.
kind of throwing their superior under the bus so they can look better.
Mhm.
Try to, it is the whole idea, and you get that in real life. I knew people when I was in the military that were similar to that style, that would basically, try to ruin their superior's career so they can reach up that,
Yeah.
go up the ladder. You'll see that. You see that with a lot of double crossing, a lot of
Mhm.
like, turning their backs.
It's almost like the
fail.
Sith have like infected that part too, by the way that the Sith always act, and the Sith are the same way. But it's just a bad guy thing. He just wanted to make sure that these guys were seen as evil. But again, the armor is cool. I love the Sand Trooper with the pauldron. That was like the first one I really fell in love with as a kid. And I was like, oh, that's the best.
They get the fun kit because they get the whole backpack and everything.
They get the backpack, the pauldron, a really huge like DL-29, I think it was, or something like
Yeah.
that, like
It's
huge
a-
repeating blaster.
Yeah, it's an LMG, a light machine
Yeah,
gun.
right.
Yeah. But yeah, and it's so cool. It's so iconic that it actually formed one of the biggest fan clubs, which
Yep.
is the 501st.
Yeah.
Their slogan is "Bad guys doing good."
Yeah.
So they're a charitable organization. So if you ever see stormtroopers in public or Empire officers in public, don't hate on them.
Yeah, they're not trying to be the government that shall not be named. They're not supremacists. They're not. Yeah.
They're huge fans of Star Wars. They like the look of the Empire because they're cool, and they use the look of the Empire to support charities, to visit hospitals of giant children. They do so much great things. I know so many people from that group that give the Empire a brighter light.
Yeah, right. They're the
I mean,
light side of the Empire.
Kind of a middle finger to Palpatine in a way.
Yeah. And to some, it has to be admitted, to some planets and to some people, the Empire actually did good.
If you were on, maybe Coruscant or closer to the inner rim,
Yeah.
or you're an average citizen in those planets, you
That-
probably
I mean,
are or in some of the Outer Rims too, because like I said,
They busted down on a lot more crime. They,
you see that in Obi-Wan with the guy.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, hey,
hmm
you know, he's a huge support. He turns him in. He's a huge supporter.
he's
of the
literally a
Empire.
mole.
Yeah, and it brings him money. It brings him, especially when you're a business,
Yeah.
in charge, but you have a business, you don't have to worry about chaos, thieves.
Well, and that was the
gangs,
big thing.
whatever.
It was really supportive to people who like, oh, I own a tavern, or I own a business, or I own some land out here in this rural area that the Empire just showed up one day and said, hey, we're going to build another town right here of barracks and a mine.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it whether you like it or not. So you can either not like it and we bulldoze you, or you can like it and our guys will come here every night and
But see-
send you money.
If you
So-
stay in these their law, their
Mhm.
lane, then you can be successful possibly, or you can be
Yeah.
safe.
If you're lucky.
I'm gonna disagree with that a little bit, because if you are in any of the Outer Rim, if you have a resource, they don't care. They will bulldoze everything.
It's
It
not
doesn't
even
matter.
the Outer Rim. They do that everywhere.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you're on a planet that has a really big resource, they will more or less turn you into a slave.
And then they'll use
From
their
any experience on that.
communications. They'll use their ways of, like I said, all the politicians are Empire, because most of them are moths or
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
or similar, and so they'll use their way to tell the people, hey, this, the guy that owned this business, the mining corporation, they were actually mining stuff for the Rebel Alliance, the
Yep.
terrorists. So we had
Yeah.
we took them over, and we employed their workers to mine
Right.
this stuff to help the Empire, to help you guys.
But if you
So-
sell your soul to the devil and 100% work with them, you can become rich.
And I think we're gonna see a
You have
lot
to
more of
sell-
that with Andor,
Yeah, you just got to sell everybody out.
because we're
Well,
gonna
the-
see more of the political side
Yeah.
of the leaders and senators who had the choice of, you can either do this and support us, or we're going to turn
Yeah.
on you, and
Yeah.
turn your people into whatever we need.
Right.
And we'll see a lot. We should see a lot, because we see from the teaser that he's doing a lot of spy stuff.
I'll honestly be really
He-
surprised
yeah.
if we don't see the ghost
Oh,
in
dude,
in
I would-
Andor.
yeah.
Because he's
Because
talking about how easy it is, because like I said, they're doing the mass.
yeah,
So wide. So there's so many of them, and you see that also with the Mandalorian, how kind of easy it is to kind of implant yourself. Which I imagine, if you can get over the kind of fear that the Empire imposes,
hmm
which is what they had to overcome.
Yeah.
They're not as as impossible as you think if you want to get in there.
Well,
Um,
they
yeah.
they can be, because if you don't have money, then you can't do anything.
you
And
have to have
start
something
see
they want.
that,
It doesn't have to be money. It
Well,
can be
yeah.
intel. It can be resources. It can be
but you have to be able to get that,
have to be able
because
to
you
get
start to see
something.
that in Bad Batch. Whenever they're trying to get off that planet, you have to have the money to buy the pass. And if you can't buy a pass,
And
you're
even if-
stuck on that planet.
well, and that's also though because the pass came with your ID chain, and they wanted everyone to be ID'd.
Yep.
So it's now again, bad thing, good thing. Everyone's being watched.
Yeah.
Good thing.
Yeah.
Now, if you do a crime, you're found immediately.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that thing where it's like, China's bad. Yes, China's bad. There are or certain parts of that are bad, but at the same time, no crime. There's still a seedy backworld, and there's still in no part of any world, mythical or not,
No crime. The crime just moved up.
the crime moved up to the government.
The government isn't the best. The people are fantastic.
Right, exactly.
And that's what the Empire is built. People can't be blamed. Well, the Empire is the epitome of lawful evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if you get their pass, and if you jump through every hoop, if you're in their way, they will, because the
Yeah.
Done.
Empire is the
Gone.
complete authority of everything. They will destroy you if they have to. If
Yeah.
you're, they need to park their Star Destroyer in their house. They don't care. We'll have a stormtrooper polish it later.
Right, exactly. We're gonna remove the dent that was your house. Oh, it's gross.
That's how they work.
Yep.
But I guess it's that kind of that chance. Do you wait till the Empire walks over you? If they do, or do you wait for lawlessness, chaos to break out? So
Yeah.
I imagine a lot of planets dealt with that,
Right.
especially the outer rim planets where chaos and stuff like that happens a lot, like Tatooine.
Mm-hmm.
So having the Empire on the
Lost.
planet can be good, or the the gangs not so good because it cuts into their money.
Yeah. But then, of course, the Empire works very hand in hand with all the gangs, and like, of course, they know of them, they know about them, and if they ever get too uppity, then they take them down because Palpatine
Sure,
refuses to have
I would
any.
imagine they have a very
competition.
tenuous relationship with the Hutts.
Oh yeah.
Well, the fact that they still have power, yeah.
Right.
Because
That's the
Could the
one part
Hutts-
of the galaxy that's always remained, even outside of the Empire. Hut spaces. That's them.
could the Hutts have taken the one?
No.
Okay.
They could defend themselves, but they
Okay.
could not expand. And if they
The-
started, it would just
I would
start
imagine
something.
the Hutts provided a good service for them, though.
That's the point. Why?
Yeah.
The loss of a war versus the wealth of working together was so astronomically separate.
Yeah, it's like the Hutts and then the... Why can't I remember the name? The Spice Runners.
Pikes.
Yes.
And so like the Hutts, they don't have a typical standing military that
Mhm.
like that. So working with the Empire actually is a good thing for them because they'll come say, hey, the Empire's like, I'm coming to this planet. The Hut's like, great, we work together. I send you a little bit of cut from that planet.
Mhm.
You make sure that our operations are messed with.
It's like mafia
Basically,
protection.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they basically were working hand in hand when they could.
Yeah.
And it made sense because, like I said, instead of the Hutts having to pay, gangs or bounty hunters or whatever, they now will just do it to the government. And
Right.
It's a lot easier and straightforward, and we know we can kind of see how they're a lot easier to predict than a lot of your random gangs and bounty hunters are.
Yeah.
I would like to see some of those communications.
Oh yeah.
Like, backroom deals or whatever between the Hutts and the Empire, and like either Tarkin going to talk to them or Thrawn or something.
I
you
mean,
know?
yeah, and maybe we'll see some of that with Andor,
Yeah.
even because that would make sense to have that seedy underworld part really thrown in there. Maybe we'll finally get to go to Nar Shaddaa. That'd be awesome.
No, they're just gonna keep teasing it.
You're right, exactly. They're never gonna show it off. I would love to see more about the Imperial training, even and like
Yeah.
how. But one of my favorite things, honestly, is the transition. Watching the transition from Republic to Empire in Bad Batch and Rebels and all that stuff has
It
been
happens so quickly.
awesome. It happens very quickly. Palpatine was ready. He had everything set up. The second those
I'm-
dominoes started to fall, man.
I'm sure he already had it already being done.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see a lot of, like we mentioned before, some transition to the First Order.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of gap that we don't actually see.
Yeah,
And,
'cause
you know,
we're
we
getting
love
a
Vader.
little with Mando. but-
Vader's a badass. Yeah, the Remnant and stuff. We love Vader though, and without Sidious, the Empire would not have started. But he did nothing to keep the Empire running besides tell all his subordinates, "Fear me or I'll kill you," and don't
Yeah,
let
'cause-
this die.
He kind of effed off and
Yeah,
did
he's doing his own thing. He's doing his own thing. That's why Tarkin's in charge.
And he would, I
Tarkin and
guarantee
Thrawn
he,
and
he would have these little like memos go out.
yeah,
Just like,
he told his
bring
moffs
me-
what to do, and the moffs did it.
Bring me something for cloning.
Yeah, right, exactly. And Vader was, like the Imperial poster boy of doom, and if he shows up, everyone dies.
Yeah.
Everyone dies.
Dude.
Yeah, we see that in some of the Mandalorian
Mm-hmm.
with the idea of that, and then
a little
that's
more
also-
in
yeah.
Obi.
yeah,
Oh man, that Obi-Wan,
Dude.
Obi-Wan, where he's just walking through the town, just kills the kid, kills his dad.
I think up until that point we haven't really seen that on screen yet.
Not a lot of kid death either.
Well, no, I meant
Full
Vader
on.
going.
Oh, just like
that
full
crazy.
bad. Yeah, no, we don't say that very often. But the main reason we were really wanting to focus on the admirals and the stormtroopers and stuff is because, again, that's the actual Empire. Vader is trying to kill Anakin and become more powerful than Sidious to kill him, and Sidious is trying to make sure that never happens and be immortal forever. And they're doing their own thing. And the Empire is different. Like, and as much as it does suck, like, the rebels killed a lot of people who were just doing a job on
Yeah,
the Death Star
but
number
they
1.
still didn't kill
On
as
Death
many.
Star number 2, one of my favorite points from Clerks and from all other Nerd Talks, those were not Imperial workers on the second Death Star. Those were a lot of hired hands, and the Rebels blew them up.
But hey, look at this fireworks show
Yeah.
at the end.
But I would argue it's still not as many people it was killed on Andor.
Indoor? You mean Alderaan?
Alderaan. My brain is not
You know
on.
what? They killed a lot of people on Alderaan, but I mean, and of course, what happens with First Order? They kill a planet's worth.
They kill a whole system.
Multiple planets worth.
So that's I don't want to get too political. You see that kind of mirrored in history as well.
Yeah.
With the nuclear nukes being dropped in Japan.
Right.
Killed a lot of innocent people, but it stopped the Japanese Empire for what they were doing at the time. Whether side coin you look, there was a lot of atrocities that were kind of forgotten that Japanese Empire did at the time.
Yeah.
The losses against each other.
Right, because then
have
it
to look
lessens
at
them
what
almost.
actually stopped.
Yeah.
But it stopped a lot of the atrocities from continuing, and
It
in the
stopped them
same
from-
way with the Death Star.
Mm-hmm.
It stopped from the major atrocities. It didn't stop everything instantly, but it put a halt on the big.
Yeah, and that's only because Sidious was just such a good planner. Because then we get to see in the Battlefront 2 game, again, I highly recommend anyone who hasn't played the storyline to play it. Operation Cinder, which is also devastating. Lots of people die. But that's like a robot that was literally invented with Palpatine's AI kind of construct robot mental program in case this were to happen. So he planned for every single situation. And that helped a lot.
Great strategist.
Yeah, he was
He had a lot of training from
Pelagius,
yeah.
which hopefully we get to see in the Acolyte.
You know what we missed that it could have been a fun plot line with the 9th movie?
Mm-hmm.
We see the clones of Sidious.
Oh yeah.
It would be in a funny plot line to have the clones actually be successful, and then they just start warring against each other.
Oh.
Right? That is such
Or
a
almost
flaw
like
in his
almost
thing.
in like a thing of like, no, I'm the real one. Yeah.
The one thing he didn't plan for was himself.
Yeah, was himself.
Because I wonder if he did or not, because that is something that you would have to account for.
Well, but think about it. We don't ever see a full clone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His body is like half there and decrepit, and then when he absorbs their dyad power, that's when he becomes whole again.
Yeah, because
Well,
he's
that was
not.
the plan
Mhm.
at one point, was to clone himself. But that would have been so funny, because they kind of do something with the Force Unleashed too, with the clone of Sidious.
Mhm.
And that was always the idea originally with the original script of Star Wars, was because he wrote that far ahead, and the original storyline was Sidious clones himself a bunch of times. And so that would have been, I think that would have been a funny storyline though, because I can't see Sidious working with himself.
No.
No.
Yeah.
I
Who else
think
would he hate more than himself?
Right. I think most of the hardest part would be trying to transfer all of his power,
Yeah.
because that would have been his biggest problem, and that's probably why he was looking for Grogu, and because he wanted that Force ability stuff.
Yeah. And that's kind of again that's going to be a fun part for Mandalorian, is seeing more of the backroom science from it and how it all came apart from what they did with the taking all the stuff they took from Kamino and then destroyed the planet like they do so well. What was that? Admiral? Who was the one from Bad Batch? Rampant. Admiral Rampant. If you're an admiral, you're pretty much the world's biggest dickhead, but you're very good at it. Like, they're good villains.
That's one thing that I'm excited for both Andor and Bad Batch Season 2, is because that's in the prime time of that transition. We can see one from a kind of a rebel spy standpoint,
Yeah.
to a old clone trooper standpoint that's trying to get away from the Empire. So you'll see both, and I'm excited to see these transitions, because we get the Mandalorian, we get a lot later,
Yeah.
a lot different. So it's
You
post.
get the fall of the Empire and then
Yeah,
the
you get the
resurrection of it.
that would be cool to see eventually in the Mandalorian. Maybe some sparks of the First Empire. I
Mhm.
think that'd be kind of interesting. So see that transition. So
Yeah.
it's cool to see that. If we do see more of the Civil War era, the New Hope, um, Empire, and the Return of the Jedi. If we keep that era, which I kind of wish we'd move away from, I do like exploring the parts that we don't really get to see too
Mhm.
much of.
I think we can explore that more in the shows and then start moving on in the movies.
Yeah, because I would rather have a show, but I mean, it could be like the Saving Private Ryan of, it could be just a battalion of nobody rebellion soldiers or Empire soldiers. Tell a story of both and make us like both, and then they come to a head and they have to fight one another.
Yeah.
That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see the political side of it.
Yeah.
To see the political side of the Empire in Andor.
That's the great thing about Star Wars. Is there's so much there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I'm so glad we've moved away from the Skywalker line, the Skywalker saga, because there's so much in Star. So great characters, so great, settings.
Yeah.
So great storylines, so great factions. There's so many interesting plot lines that we can explore, and I'm glad that we're in a part where we have Disney that's exploring. I mean, even before Disney, we're starting to head towards more Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's the thing that people love to complain, like, it's not the way I thought Star Wars was. Well, what we thought Star Wars was is we just had comics and occasionally a video game and occasional books. But that's it. We didn't have this rush of content. We have tons of comments, tons of books being made. Nowhere near as much as that we're getting now.
Yeah.
And it's great to have all this.
It is.
No, and I think it's really good because you don't have to like all of it.
Right.
You can like bits and pieces. Like, a lot of people I know aren't liking High Republic. I don't know why. It's awesome. But you don't have to like it. You don't need to know all that background.
Yeah.
You can go off and do the Mandalorian stuff.
Which, that's a lot of people fell back because of the Mandalorian, which is fine. Go right ahead. The Remnant Troopers, you can tell, are a little dirty. Of course, that was Tatooine, so they're going to be a little dirtier. But I think the Empire alone has had not its full heyday and run. Like, we could see a few more stories, sure. But yeah, we do eventually need to move on. But we can still really appreciate what we have, though, of the Empire, of the Rebellion age, of this underdog fight versus, a completely overreaching Big Brother. And it's awesome. I love the Empire and I love the Rebellion. I'm happy the Rebellion wins because they are, of course, the good guys. And happy the Empire gets taken down. But at the same time, the Empire is just a love-to-hate kind of villain. Because it has Thrawn, it has Tarkin, Vader. It has all these evil entities that are the redemption, or just the fact that they're so cold and they're just cool.
Like, I don't know, Thrawn feels redeemable in a way.
I'm sure Thrawn could be redeemable, but no one likes him because they want to redeem him.
Oh no, some
people just like him. They want him. They want him to be exactly who he is.
That's one good thing about Star Wars is they have so many great villains.
Yeah.
That you have, like I said, I mentioned before, you have the two villains. You have the villains that are so good that you hate them, and you have the villains that are so cool that you really like them.
Yeah.
And in Star Wars, we have to have those. To have a great epic story, the good guys have to overcome something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be, the kind of space opera that we want, that you'd want to watch like this. So to have that, you need that iconic bad guy.
Yep.
And the
Empire delivers
plays that role.
Yep. They are always able to just deliver a good, iconic, evil person who you look forward to getting beaten, but you also don't mind when they outsmart the heroes and almost get them because you're like, hey, they did it good. They very hardly, in my eyes, do they write bad Imperial storylines or bad Imperial dialogue. Imperial officers always have great monologues and they always give that nice villain speech, but it's not too cheesy. I've never been like, oh my god, just kill this guy already. Like, I love the villains they create because they're witty and they are vicious. and I like the bad guys. I like the Empire. I
They're
like it.
they're way more. Um, I don't. I like them way better than the Separatists
Oh yeah.
and
Oh
in the
yeah.
Clone Wars.
Well, the
The
Separatists
character,
were just pawns of Palpatine.
All you really ever saw was a bunch of droids.
but there's only a few characters from them that are really that you like,
Mhm.
because most of the ones that are leading the droids are the um, Trade Federation guys.
Yeah.
Who are really annoying, and then you have the Genosians that are really hard to understand.
Yeah.
And so, you only have a few bad guys that you like, which is Count Dooku,
Yeah.
and I guess Grievous is cool.
Right.
I don't know if I really Grievous is I don't really care for his character. He's just cool. He's cool fighting, but everything else he's like, eh. I mean,
I
he looks
love
cool.
the designs of what it would have been like though had Vader gotten Grievous style parts or newer. Oh, have you ever seen that? Look some of that up. It's gorgeous, crazy, badass looking art. Had they given Vader good new armor, that's something. Again, Palpatine didn't pay for good armor for the troops, and he gave Vader like some of the worst upgrades possible, so he would constantly be in pain.
Yeah.
Palpatine is a dick. He's great at torturing, and that's why everyone feared him. He ruled entirely by fear. And he wanted to though. That was his whole stick, was to rule by fear. So people,
put the-
they really separated them. Even when you hear them like in the Empire, they talk about the Emperor and the Empire almost as separate entities. The Emperor is the devil. That is pure evil. The Empire is just the vessel in which that evil resides. The people really like they pushed back in their own way in the beginning, but they didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
They were all just told that the Jedi tried to take over, and now we need to secure the
It was
galaxy.
a brilliant plan to convince the main population.
It's like politicians nowadays. They all say the same thing. I'm gonna bring in more jobs and more money, and we're all gonna be fine and protected, and we're all gonna sleep in golden sheets and big castles. Yeah. And then they don't deliver.
And
Nothing.
in the end, we all can agree on one thing: it's all Jar Jar's fault.
It's all Jar Jar, every bit of it.
It was him. He proposed it. He started the vote.
He started the vote of no confidence.
It's all Jar Jar's fault. The true evil of Star Wars.
Darth Jar Jar.
We wouldn't have had the Empire. We wouldn't have lost Alderaan. We wouldn't have had the Death Star. We wouldn't have had the First Order. All of this evil. Jar Jar.
Can I also
would've
though
lost-
just say
Lost
the
Sith.
I can't remember the actor's name for Tarkin, but the man who played Tarkin, they almost like just made Tarkin after him. I almost feel like because the shoes that everyone wore for officer shoes hurt his feet and he refused to wear them.
Oh, yeah.
So they never filmed Tarkin above the knee because he's wearing house loafers.
There's a few actors that got away with it.
Yeah.
He didn't get away from it because due to being
Peter
famous.
Cushing.
Peter Cushing, yes.
You get a lot more earlier of the newer movies with because they're so famous to get away with
Right.
changing the character. You get that with Samuel L. Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Get that with
Sir
Count
Alec
Dooku.
Guinness.
Forget his name. Count Dooku.
Christopher Lee.
Basically Christopher Lee.
Right.
His whole
And it
character
works.
is basically reworked to him.
Right. But at least
Count
Christopher Lee's cool enough to be his own character, so at least that works.
Well, Count Dooku was originally a character before the filming.
Yeah.
And they basically kind of reshaped him to be, Count Dracula.
Meets
Jedi.
Count Dracula meets Saruman.
And it worked.
Right.
Right.
But yeah, so the Empire is again a bad guy we all love to hate, and it's that infinite threat that is always looming during the Age of the Rebellion. So
That's
the
what
original
drives them.
trilogy needed it, and it worked so good because they lose in A New Hope, and then they almost win, and like they really come back in Empire Strikes Back, and then Return of the Jedi. They have their final moments where everything starts to fall apart. It's beautiful to see, and like George Lucas always says, it's poetry. It rhymes. So.
You see the return
Yeah.
as the First Order.
And then the First Order. So definitely looking forward to more of the transitional stage between Republic to Empire, Empire to First Order. That's always fun. And definitely looking forward to Andor to see more of the shore troopers and more of the Imperial
Political
stuff.
intrigue.
Political intrigue, exactly. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and let us know what your favorite stormtrooper down in the comments, or if you're not into stormtroopers, let us know your favorite Imperial ship or officer. Just let us know an Empire fact that you like. What's your favorite Empire Day celebration?
or one you love to hate.
One you love to hate, exactly. The admiral you love to hate. So thank you so much for joining us, and as always, may the Force serve you well.
May the force be with you.